I was catching up with an old college friend at a coffee shop yesterday, and the vibe was surprisingly intense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was just glued to his phone, practically vibrating with that specific kind of nervous energy, the kind you usually see before a big date.
I know that exact look.
So eventually, he turns the screen to me. His eyes are wide, and he whispers, "She finally replied. I think I'm actually making progress."
Cool. Okay, I'm hooked. Who's she?
He shows me an Instagram DM from this fitness model he's been following, a woman with maybe, I don't know, 200,000 followers.
Right.
And the reply he was so ecstatic about.
Let me guess. Not a long, thoughtful paragraph.
2 generic fire emojis. That was it.
Wow.
But watching him, you'd think he just closed $1 million deal. He starts explaining his strategy, how he comments on every single post within 10 minutes, how he replies to her stories with these witty observations.
Oh, he has a whole system.
A whole system. And he's telling me how these emojis prove that his persistence is paying off. He genuinely believed he was building a relationship brick by brick.
That is fascinating and a little bit heartbreaking.
Well, it gets worse, because then I grabbed my own phone and pulled up her profile. Under that very photo he had commented on, there were over 4,000 other comments.
4,000?
Goddess, please notice me. Perfection. I scrolled for maybe 30 seconds and saw this endless sea of men doing the exact same thing my friend was doing, just all of them shouting into the void. And the contrast was just brutal. Here's this smart, capable guy sitting across from me, treating 2 emojis like a winning lottery ticket, and he's completely oblivious to the fact that he wasn't a suitor in her eyes.
He was a statistic.
He was a statistic. He thought he was investigating a connection. But looking at that infinite scroll of desperation, I realized he was actually engaging in something much more dangerous. He was actively bankrupting his own value in a marketplace that was already crashing.
That entire scenario, I mean, that one conversation in a coffee shop, it is a deeply cynical yet perfect encapsulation of our digital dating moment.
It really is.
It cuts right to the core of this massive structural dysfunction. Your friend's behavior, that intense misplaced enthusiasm over 2 emojis, it's a classic symptom of what we're going to talk about today. Validation inflation leading directly to what you could call sexual market suicide.
Right. So we need to move past the anecdotes, as powerful as they are.
We do. We need to perform a true deep dive into the powerful, the invisible forces that underpin this entire digital attention economy. The goal is to figure out why smart, capable people get locked into these self-defeating loops.
Okay, so what's the mission for today's deep dive?
Our mission today is to unpack how the big structural forces, so economic reality, our own evolutionary biology, and algorithmic design, how they all converge to completely distort mate selection, erode self-perception, and fundamentally influence behavior across the board.
That's a huge undertaking.
It is. We're investigating the macroeconomics of attention, specifically how this currency war started and what constant digital validation actually does to a person's perspective. Then we'll look under the hood at the neurobiological hijacking mechanisms that make us compulsive users.
The brain chemistry.
The brain chemistry. And crucially, we'll analyze the opaque algorithmic architectures of dating applications and social media that monetize this whole chase. We'll finish by looking at the emerging legal and ethical challenges posed by systems specifically designed for structural manipulation.
Okay, let's unpack this with the weight it deserves. What my friend was experiencing wasn't just, bad luck. It felt like a macroeconomic collapse of courtship.
It is. That's a perfect way to put it.
And that's where we have to start. We need to transition this anecdote into an economic reality because fundamentally, the core currency of the modern sexual marketplace has. It's just completely shifted.
It's not what it used to be.
Not at all. It's not just about the old model of resource for sex exchanges, money, status, power that defined previous generations. Now, the transaction begins long before any physical meeting in this silent digital economy of likes, comments, DMs, and views.
So the new primary currency, the thing everyone is trading in,
is attention and validation.
Exactly. And the problem here isn't just that attention is being traded, it's the sheer volume and the recklessness with which one side is giving it away.
That's right, because here is the brutal economic twist. Male attention is treated as a finite, non-renewable resource. It represents real-time, cognitive focus, emotional energy.
It's a real cost.
It's a real cost.
Yeah.
But modern men, in their pursuit of any recognition at all, are devaluing this capital with what one analysis described as Weimar Republic-level recklessness.
Okay, that's a powerful analogy. Let's break that down.
For those who haven't studied 1920s German economics, the Weimar analogy is just stunningly precise. We're talking about hyperinflation.
Where money becomes worthless.
Completely. It loses its value so fast you need a wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. In our context, men are flooding the market with indiscriminate free validation, a non-stop barrage of fire emojis, comments, DMs.
Which creates an immediate, catastrophic, inflationary spiral.
Exactly. When you constantly give away your attention for free, you render your individual attention capital worthless. The ultimate consequence of this resource misallocation is, sadly, sexual market suicide.
So you've inflated the price for everyone else, for the recipients, while completely bankrupting your own position.
You've given away your scarce resource, your focus, for literally nothing of value in return.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The Weimar analogy describes a total market dislocation where the perceived value of the currency drops to near zero because the supply has become, for all intents and purposes, infinite.
So how do the platforms themselves distort this? How does this happen on a technical level?
Well, we need to analyze how digital platforms distort this value distribution, and it largely comes down to the scaling of the Pareto principle.
The Pareto principle, just to remind everyone, that's the famous 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
So 20% of the inputs account for 80% of the outputs.
Precisely. In the context of attraction, traditionally, high levels of attention, the kind reserved for celebrities or, the socioeconomic elite, that was limited to the top percentile of desirability.
You had to be a movie star or a rock star to get that kind of attention.
Exactly. Digital platforms, however, allowed the Pareto principle to operate at what we can call a nuclear scale. The distribution of attention is just drastically skewed. They enable women who might be statistically average or even, above average to receive attention volumes that were previously unimaginable.
So we're talking about volumes once reserved for A-list celebrities suddenly being available to someone with, say, 5,000 Instagram followers.
Precisely. And this scaling results in a phenomenon called digital bloat.
Wait, digital bloat? That sounds like something I get after Thanksgiving dinner, not a dating phenomenon. Can you tell me exactly what that means in this context?
It's a profound psychological distortion where a recipient's social media metrics, their likes, their followers, their engagement, become conflated with her actual intrinsic mate value.
So she genuinely starts to believe those numbers are her true value.
Yes, purely because the sheer supply of attention validates that belief in a concrete numerical way. The consequence is that her perception threshold resets entirely.
Let's go back to my friend's situation.
Think about it. If a woman receives 500 DMs a day, or if, say, a cashier gets 100 compliments praising her appearance digitally, she becomes, quite simply, economically incapable of valuing attention from an ordinary man in her physical environment.
His polite compliment, which might have been a valuable piece of currency 5 years ago,
is now worthless noise. It barely registers above the algorithmic din. The sheer volume of incoming attention has inflated her expectations to an absurd, almost unserviceable level.
So the problem is the volume, not necessarily the quality of the recipient. The attention they receive artificially inflates their standing.
And that inflation is then funded by the very men who want to court them.
It's a self-defeating cycle.
It is. And this leads us to the self-defeating loop you observed with your friend, a dynamic known as orbiter dynamics.
That's a powerful visual, man. Orbiting digital personas.
Yeah.
How does this dynamic actually construct the barriers they're trying to break down?
Well, by orbiting, by leaving clever comments, liking every post, sending unreciprocated DMs, they are inadvertently constructing the very attention barriers that exclude them from realistic partnerships.
They're feeding the digital bloat.
They are feeding the digital bloat. They become the architects of their own irrelevance by constantly validating a social status that puts the recipient completely out of their league.
And the core irrationality here is what?
It's the misclassification of effort. Men consistently misclassify non-sexual attention, a like, a comment, a fire emoji response, as legitimate courtship behavior. They see it as an actual investment in a future relationship.
They see their time and emotional energy as capital being deposited.
Exactly, but the recipient doesn't see it that way at all.
Not even close.
Not even close. For the recipient, this attention functions purely as a consumption good. It's used for dopamine acquisition, for mood boosting, for social status signaling. It requires absolutely zero reciprocal investment from her side.
So she consumes the validation, gets the high, and moves on.
The transaction is a closed, one-sided loop. benefiting only the recipient and, crucially, the platform that profits from all this engagement.
And the pure economic irrationality of this becomes clearest when you look at platforms where you actually pay for this attention.
Exactly. Live streaming, certain types of digital content creation. This is where users experience what economists call diminishing marginal utility with each contribution.
I've seen this on a live stream. The first tip is met with huge gratitude, a shout out and everything.
Right.
But then you see hundreds of dollars pour in, and the initial excitement just vanishes.
That's the utility cliff. The first $10 tip might elicit a meaningful personal thank you, which gives the sender a huge psychological payoff. But as the stream continues and the tips flood in, the next $10 contribution is just invisible.
So the user experiences diminishing returns on their investment.
Meanwhile, the recipient develops exponentially rising thresholds. The gratitude you got yesterday for $10 now demands $50 for equivalent recognition today, just to cut through the noise.
This isn't relationship building.
Not at all, nor is it genuine connection. It's a perfect example of behavioral conditioning where male users are, in effect, training women and training themselves to devalue their attention and investment over time. It is a psychological treadmill designed to keep the most desperate participants running faster just to stay in the same place.
That dynamic of escalating cost and collapsing value, it brings us squarely out of the economy and into the brain itself.
It has to.
If these platforms are fundamentally engineered to capture our attention, we have to look at the neurobiological basis of digital dependence. This entire economic structure relies on the brain's fundamental reward system being exploited.
Absolutely. And the first step here is clarity on the key chemical involved.
Yeah.
Dopamine. We often hear it mischaracterized as the pleasure chemical. And it's inaccurate and misleading.
So it's not about pleasure itself. What is its true function then?
Dopamine is the motivation chemical. It drives anticipation, desire, and the seeking behavior rather than the pleasure of consumption itself.
Okay, so that massive surge of dopamine happens when you anticipate a match or when you hear the ping of a new notification.
Exactly. It's the anticipation, not when you actually read the message. It's what makes you check your phone obsessively because your brain believes there is a potential reward waiting for you.
The problem then is the hijack.
Yes. Our brain's reward system evolved over millennia under conditions of scarcity. It was wired to encourage survival behaviors, finding food, securing shelter, locating mates, all of which require effort and often lengthy delays between the effort and the reward.
It's an ancient, slow-moving system.
It is. And in the modern digital landscape, this ancient system is hijacked by a constant, unprecedented stream of novel, easily accessible stimuli. Every ping, every notification is a potential reward cue, triggering an immediate minor dopamine release.
So it creates a compulsive, short-circuiting feedback loop that drives us back to the screen hundreds of times a day.
We are receiving rewards at a speed and volume our brains simply were not designed to process.
And what happens when you hit a system designed for scarcity with a fire hose of unlimited digital stimuli? What's the biological result?
You get dopamine desensitization.
Yeah.
This chronic overstimulation is like blasting your ears with music 24/7. Eventually, you have to turn the volume up just to hear the normal sounds of life.
So the receptors literally downregulate.
The dopamine receptors literally downregulate. They require increasingly intense or frequent digital experiences, more controversial content, more extreme validation, more dramatic interactions to achieve the same level of satisfaction they got previously from something simple.
So this is why we see this vicious cycle of escalating use and diminishing returns.
And it precisely mirrors the patterns observed in chemical substance addiction. You need more of the stimulus just to feel normal, not even to feel good.
The comparison to addiction is striking. And it needs to be, because the technology isn't passively facilitating this, it's actively engineered for it.
Right.
If the digital stimulus is the drug, the smartphone is the digital needle. It is the ubiquitous, constant delivery mechanism for those quick, accessible dopamine fixes. It's always in your pocket, ready to help you escape boredom, anxiety, or loneliness.
And the platforms are masterful at interface design. They intentionally craft features from the colors of the notifications to the seemingly endless nature of infinite scrolling to exploit our reward systems and maximize engagement. Social media, in particular, operates as the ultimate dopamine slot machine.
The slot machine analogy is perfect because of the unpredictability, right? It's not about a guaranteed win.
Exactly. They leverage variable reward schedules, which is a core psychological principle proven to maximize addictive potential. Think about a slot machine. If you knew when it was going to pay out, you'd only play then.
You'd wait for the perfect moment.
But because the likes, the comments, the shares are unpredictable, you don't know when the next reward will arrive or how big it will be, your brain is constantly held in a state of high anticipation.
And this uncertainty forces that compulsive checking behavior.
And it reinforces a deep dependency on social validation for self-esteem. That need for social validation taps into our deep-seated evolutionary need for connection and approval. When that positive interaction finally hits, it triggers that minor satisfying dopamine release, reinforcing the digital habit loop rather than genuine, effortful social connection.
So we have an ancient evolutionary brain that's highly susceptible to visual cues, and we've put it in an environment of constant, high-fidelity, readily available digital imagery. That sounds like a recipe for a massive evolutionary mismatch.
It absolutely is. The male brain, for instance, is operating with what you could call Pleistocene-era wiring. It's designed to visually process cues and trigger neurochemical responses that evolve for physical proximity and immediate reproductive opportunity.
But now it's being applied to a digital ecosystem.
Full of high-fidelity images, carefully curated videos, and mediated personas. The brain struggles to differentiate the digital image from physical reality. It releases dopamine and creates the illusion of potential connection where none truly exists.
And this biological vulnerability is systematically exploited.
By the platform algorithms, and very often by female content strategies that are specifically optimizing for this validation stream.
And the outcome of that is the formation of a one-sided emotional toll, which is defined as a parasocial relationship.
This is a critical concept for understanding digital celebrity and influence. It is a one-sided emotional investment. Men, or users in general, perceive intimacy and potential connection, often intensely, with these mediated figures.
Like your friend in the fitness model.
Exactly. They may exhibit high levels of identification with the celebrity or content creator, feeling like they know them. Meanwhile, the recipient experiences this only as content consumption and validation harvesting. The screen functions as a one-way mirror.
A one-way mirror. Let's elaborate on that. So I, the viewer, feel like I'm seeing through the glass and establishing a relationship with the person on the other side. But what is she seeing?
She's seeing a reflection of her status and a raw metric of engagement. The mirror is reflecting her own desirability back at her, funded by the attention you are giving.
So I feel like I'm establishing a genuine rapport.
But you are merely being harvested by dual extraction systems, the algorithm optimizing your engagement and the person optimizing their validation stream. She is the beneficiary, not the partner.
And this deeply sustained impact of digital fantasy on reality is massive. I mean, studies show that intense exposure to mediated celebrities and the formation of these parasocial relationships significantly influence mate selection.
They absolutely do. This intense exposure leads to an idealization of relationship views. Romantic beliefs that are simply unrealistic and often based on the curated perfection of a celebrity's life, not the messy reality of a relationship.
People develop a desire for a partner who resembles that mediated figure.
In terms of aesthetics, lifestyle, or even the dramatic relationship dynamics you see on reality TV, it's crucial to note that this process leads to an erosion of gratification. When you hold these unrealistic, media-driven expectations that a real partner should provide the drama, aesthetics, or endless resources seen in a celebrity's carefully curated public life, it impairs your decision quality. And inevitably, it leads to lower gratification from your actual life partner and the relationships you have.
Because you're constantly measuring reality against an impossible digital fantasy.
Precisely.
That sets the stage perfectly for the dating apps themselves. Because if they were truly passive intermediaries, they would simply be a digital bulletin board. But they are not. They are sophisticated, effective infrastructures. And this brings us to the Tinder paradox.
Yes, the core conflict between the user's ultimate goal and the company's profit motive.
This tension is existential for these companies, isn't it?
It is. Your goal as a user is to find a successful offline encounter that leads to you leaving the app and finding a relationship.
But the company is engineered for continuous user engagement.
If you succeed and delete the app, they lose a revenue stream, or at least the potential for future subscription upgrades. The business model, especially for publicly listed parent companies like Match Group, drives the entire system toward maximizing subscriber revenue by keeping you active and paying for as long as humanly possible.
So if your success is the enemy of their profit, they have to turn finding love into a difficult, frustrating, and above all, monetizable task. How do they achieve that?
Through gamification as manipulation. Apps intentionally gamify the search for a partner, invoking those same gambler tendencies that dopamine loves. They use compulsive behaviors reinforced through features like infinite swiping, match streaks, and crucially, paid boosts and manipulative prompts.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about Tinder's Boost or Super Boost, which promise temporary visibility to escape the visibility throttling they likely put you under in the first place. Or Hinge's Rose Jail mechanism, which locks premium features behind paying for roses.
Which are supposed to signal high intent, but really just gatekeep communication.
Exactly. These are deliberately designed to transform the emotional activity of seeking connection into a quantifiable, competitive task that keeps you scrolling and ultimately paying.
And they're targeting the most susceptible among us.
Absolutely. Effective design features like the intermittent reinforcement of a random match or emotionally charged prompts that force you to consider your deficiencies exploit existing psychological vulnerabilities. They target low self-esteem, social anxiety, and loneliness to maintain usage.
So the more vulnerable you are, the more susceptible you become to the system.
The more susceptible you become to a system designed to exploit that exact vulnerability for profit, driving you further into the cycle of purchasing solutions like premium visibility.
This inherent conflict leads to massive distrust from the users. I mean, they feel like they're being actively managed and their goals are being sabotaged.
That distrust has coalesced around what we can call the conflict of interest folk theory. Users are highly aware of the underlying tension.
So what's the theory?
The theory argues that the platform possesses the ability to find you a compatible match. That is the promise that gets you to sign up. But it intentionally throttles, manipulates, or sabotages the process because its financial interest is sustaining an active, paying user base.
How does that theory manifest in the user experience? What specific algorithmic harms do people perceive?
Well, interpersonally, the effects are deeply damaging to self-esteem. Users experience a direct and rapid drop in mental health due to what they perceive as algorithmic action.
Like what?
When a user who previously received steady attention suddenly gets few matches or likes, they immediately internalize this as a personal failure. One reviewer captured this emotional whiplash perfectly, asking, "Did I turn ugly in one fell swoop?"
The algorithm changed, but the user assumes they changed for the worse.
Exactly. They strongly suspect throttling of profile visibility, where the algorithm intentionally stops showing their profile to others after an initial burst of activity. This is seen as a specific tactic to coerce them into purchasing premium upgrades like gold or platinum tiers to regain that visibility.
So it forces a horrible dichotomy. Internalize the lack of matches as a personal failure, or spend money to enhance your perceived desirability.
And the distrust doesn't stop at the personal level. It extends to the platform actively destroying potential connections.
Right, the interpersonal and relational harms.
Precisely. Users suspect intentional sabotage. This includes sabotaging potential relationships matches, mysteriously disappearing and reappearing from match lists. Users often interpret this not as the other person unmatching,
But as the algorithm stepping in.
as a deliberate algorithmic action designed to keep them engaged and undermine nascent connections that might lead to leaving the platform. There's a sense of utter distrust, as users feel they have no control over the situation. They believe the app is actively hiding their most promising connections.
It sounds like the algorithm is intentionally giving users just enough hope to keep swiping, but not enough success to log off.
That's the key manipulation. They also suspect the algorithm is recommending unlikely matches. These are profiles that are too good to be true or overly attractive compared to the user's history.
So it ensures you keep swiping, but rarely match, sustaining that endless slot machine loop.
Exactly. Furthermore, algorithms often ignore explicit user preferences, like specific age ranges or distance settings, simply to maintain a high quantity of recommendations. Quantity over quality keeps you scrolling.
We also found a specific profound harm related to marginalized groups, identity-based harm. For LGBTQ+ users, particularly non-binary or queer individuals, the rigid binary filtering inherent in some dating apps, man or woman, marginalizes their experiences.
This is a systemic exclusion problem. Users described feeling marginalized, misrepresented, and suffering from anxiety because they are forced into categories that do not reflect their true identity or specific sexual preferences, like filtering for top or bottom.
So when the algorithm defaults to suggesting female users to a queer male user, despite his stated preferences,
he perceives the app as having its own agenda to keep me on the platform, rather than truly serving his needs. The algorithm prioritizes system efficiency and monetization over accurate, affirming self-representation.
and this algorithmic design spills over into facilitating and exacerbating antisocial behavior in the real world. This is where the digital design starts enabling real-world harm.
One significant finding is how the system can force antisocial acts within the app itself. When algorithms repeatedly recommend rejected profiles, even profiles that you explicitly swiped left on multiple times, what are you left to do?
I guess you have to block them.
The user is left with no option but to block or report the person just to ensure they never see that profile again. This turns the reporting feature, which should be reserved for genuine misconduct, into a desperate tool for avoiding digital nuisance.
That seems like a design flaw that encourages platform abuse.
It does, and this is made worse by the perceived misuse of reporting mechanisms. Users believe that the platform automatically implements bans or blocks based on unverified single reports,
which allows the reporting feature to be abused as retaliation for romantic rejection or personal vendettas.
For instance, an ex-partner or a rejected suitor reporting an activated account simply out of spite, leading to an immediate ban without verification. Users feel coerced, saying it feels like they are forced to meet anyone who asks, or else they could report me.
Wow, that fear of unverified banning introduces a power dynamic that enables harassment.
And then there's the real-world harassment risk amplified by local recommendation algorithms.
How does that work?
Users recount alarming instances where they were matched with or recommended to colleagues, classmates, or even teachers in a small radius. This exposure, based on the presumption of availability, led to bullying and harassment outside the platform. One specific account involved a teacher who was bullied by classmates who circulated her profile picture on public social networks.
So these algorithms don't just facilitate connection, they inadvertently expose you in professional or social contexts you wish to keep separate,
leading to real-world discomfort and harassment based on the perception that if they're on a dating app, they must be available.
So if the system is designed to defeat you, you either quit or you become a spy. Users, realizing they are in an unfair game, develop these amazing strategies to counter these systems.
Showing remarkable ingenuity in trying to regain control and agency.
Right, so they develop these complex, sometimes paradoxical tactics to game the system they believe is gaming them.
And one critical strategy is knowing your competitors. Since users internalize the scarcity of matches as a personal failure, they seek external validation and reassurance of their own self-worth by evaluating other local profiles.
Wait, so they are actively trying to spy on the dating economy. How do they do that?
They circumvent matching restrictions by creating fake profiles of the opposite sex, or temporarily changing their sexual interests. They use these fake accounts to evaluate the profiles of their local competitors.
That's incredible.
As one participant noted, creating a fake male account allowed her to see other local women's profiles, and realizing those competitors were not so good, she felt reassured, thinking her chances were high. It's a moment of digital espionage designed purely to restore battered self-esteem.
That is next-level spycraft. And it also involves what researchers call engaging in counterintuitive behaviors, or unfaithful adaptations. Why are people intentionally acting against their stated romantic interests?
Because they believe they understand the algorithm's secret ranking system, even if they don't. Users adopt paradoxical actions to disrupt perceived unfavorable algorithmic processes. For example, some intentionally dislike profiles perceived as too attractive profiles they would date because they believe matching with them will decrease their visibility ranking in the algorithm's estimation.
They think, if I match with someone out of my league, the algorithm will assume my standards are too high and penalize me by showing me fewer profiles.
Exactly. Others admit to liking profiles without any genuine interest, just to signal activity to the algorithm, trying to convince the platform they're an active, desirable user so they don't get throttled. They are optimizing for the platform, not for love.
And if they feel the system is built to sabotage successful connections, they simply leapfrog the dating app entirely. This is bypassing the system.
That's right. Users move communication to platforms like Instagram or WhatsApp very early in the interaction. This isn't just about moving to a more comfortable messaging medium. It's a manual process of regaining control and insulating a fragile connection.
And they do this for two main reasons.
Two main crucial reasons. First, to manually verify account authenticity, they distrust the app's internal verification features. Second, and most importantly, to prevent that perceived algorithmic sabotage.
They're afraid of the disappearing match.
As one person stated, they want to exchange WhatsApp contact information because there you have control there, and you do not have to be afraid of losing contact because the match disappeared or something. They are manually insulating their nascent connections from the platform's conflict of interest.
Beyond resisting the algorithms, we have to circle back to the pervasive influence of digitally mediated celebrities on the very expectations users bring into the app. This is the root cause of why my friend, seeing 2 fire emojis from a stranger, genuinely believes he is making progress.
That intense hope is rooted in what we call the cultivation effect. Intense, chronic media consumption, whether it's celebrity exposure on social networking sites or scripted romance, leads to increased celebrity persona identification.
And the formation of intense, one-sided parasocial relationships with these mediated figures.
Viewers don't just passively watch, they adopt the mindset and attitude of the celebrity they like, becoming sure that they share the same lifestyle or habits.
They believe that the reality they are seeing, the curated, perfect, dramatic life, is attainable, or that their partner should offer that same level of experience.
Exactly. And this directly impacts dating expectations, leading to warped ideal mate preferences. Empirical studies have demonstrated a significant positive relationship between exposure to mediated celebrities and the formation of these idealized, often highly romanticized views of relationships.
So the emotional involvement people have with media personalities increases their chance of desiring a partner who resembles that mediated figure.
In appearance, lifestyle, or even dramatic presentation. And it's crucial to note that this process leads to an erosion of gratification.
Right, because when you hold these unrealistic media-driven expectations that a real partner should be aesthetically flawless, offer continuous excitement, and provide a constant stream of resources,
it impairs your ability to appreciate the partner you actually have. You are constantly measuring reality against an impossible digital fantasy, confirming the deep, sustained impact of digital fantasy on lived reality.
It seems like the only logical recourse left is to hold the architects of this system accountable. The scale of this manipulation moves beyond simple consumer frustration and into the realm of systemic, legally actionable harm.
That is precisely the direction legal consensus is moving globally. We are seeing a fundamental shift from viewing these manipulative design choices as mere product features to recognizing them as structural harm that undermines autonomy.
And a key high-profile example is the Match Group litigation initiated in the United States in early 2024.
Yes. This consolidated class action alleges that platforms like Tinder and Hinge were intentionally engineered to foster compulsive engagement rather than successful connection. This is not a lawsuit alleging bad customer service. It alleges malicious design.
What specifically are they targeting in court?
The legal framing asserts that these platforms exploit user vulnerabilities through features like intermittent reinforcement, that slot machine effect we discussed, and opaque algorithmic curation specifically to generate profit through sustained interaction, not pairing people up.
So the claim is that they are actively trying to make the process inefficient to keep users paying for boosts, super likes, and premium subscriptions.
The argument is that the design is not incidental to their success, but integral to a business model that monetizes frustration.
That legal challenge reinforces a powerful ethical imperative. How does this manipulative design challenge traditional moral philosophy?
Well, from a Kantian perspective, manipulative design violates the fundamental principle of respect for persons. Immanuel Kant emphasized autonomy and rational agency as the basis for moral dignity.
You must treat people as ends in themselves, not merely as means.
Exactly. Any system designed to covertly shape user behavior, especially by exploiting emotional vulnerabilities, undermines that moral autonomy. These systems treat individuals merely as means, as raw material for engagement, data harvesting, and profit maximization, rather than as rational agents making self-determined choices.
This issue is perhaps most acutely addressed in European law, which focuses heavily on protecting cognitive autonomy.
It does. The EU Artificial Intelligence Act, adopted in 2024, introduces a groundbreaking prohibition designed to stop precisely this kind of systemic manipulation.
It's a globally significant step.
It really is. Specifically, Article 5(1)(a) of the EU AI Act bans AI systems that deploy subliminal or manipulative techniques beyond conscious awareness to materially distort behavior. This prohibition is especially concerned with systems that exploit psychological vulnerabilities to cause significant harm, which explicitly includes psychological impacts.
What does that mean in practical terms? How do they define manipulative techniques?
They are targeting designs intended to bypass your conscious, rational self. For example, if an app knows you are lonely or have low self-esteem, a psychological vulnerability, and it uses that data to deliver a specific type of intermittent reward at a vulnerable moment, that could be seen as a manipulative technique that materially distorts your behavior.
So the law focuses on the design itself.
The assessment is focused on whether the functional architecture of the system is likely to cause a material distortion of behavior, not just whether proven acute harm has occurred. It requires looking at the intent behind the code.
Furthermore, the manipulation touches on fundamental human rights, specifically the right to privacy and self-determination.
Yes. ECHR Article 8, the right to private life, has been interpreted expansively by the European Court of Human Rights to protect informational self-determination and psychological integrity. The court recognizes that systemic manipulation and the covert shaping of emotional responses are potential interferences with this right.
And legal scholars characterize this type of distortion as slow violence.
It's a great term. It is not an acute, sudden injury, not a single event, but an incremental, cumulative erosion of autonomy and emotional well-being that is often obscured by its gradual unfolding.
This requires regulatory intervention based on the likely outcome of the design pattern.
It forces regulators to assess whether the functional architecture of the system impairs decision-making capacity over time. The law recognizes that in environments engineered to exhaust rather than inform, the legitimacy of user consent becomes highly questionable.
We started with the story of a smart guy treating 2 fire emojis like a winning lottery ticket. We've learned that his attention is economic capital, that this capital is being recklessly devalued through hyperinflation, and that algorithms are sophisticatedly monetizing the resulting psychological distress. The systems you use are not passive intermediaries. They are sophisticated, effective infrastructures engineered for dependency, maintaining a chase for profit and driving a massive structural distortion in human mate selection.
In this era of attention hyperinflation, the value of digital devotion has collapsed to zero. Your future bargaining position and self-worth depend entirely on a single economic decision. Withdraw your validation from circulation, the strong ignore the digital noise, and focus exclusively on self-actualization, becoming desirable precisely through their absence from the collapsing attention marketplace. Let scarcity restore your value.